And we have two meetings for the price of one today. So our first meeting is going to be the Source Protection Authority meeting with Marika. And Marika has bought, I am terrible with names. It was Elizabeth, wasn't it? Isabel. How could I forget my grandfather's name? Okay, so the first thing is declaring of interest. If anyone has an interest, a community interest, you can declare it now or at any time during this meeting. Okay. And the second one is we have the agenda for the source water protection. Could I ask someone to please motion the adoption of the agenda? Motion by Jeff, seconded by Helen. All in favor? Carried. In main business is the approval of the minutes of the Source Water Protection Authority meeting of October 21st, 2024. Could I have someone move the approval of the minutes? Taylor, and seconded by Mary Lou. All those in favor? Carried. And we have the approval of the minutes of Source Water Protection Authority meeting dated December 11th, 2023. Could I have someone move those? Janet. And second? Jeff, all in favor? Carried. Okay, so our next section is the long-awaited report, and Marika's telling me this is sort of the steps they've been going along for the past 7 years. So we have a Section 36 update, the report, and Marika, I'm going to turn this over to you to take it over.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. Before I get into the staff report, I would like to extend a welcome to Isabel. Isabel is the new Watershed Science and Engineering Director at MVCA, but she's also going to be supporting source water protection from a technical perspective moving forward. For those of you who may have known Brian Stratton, he retired after 20 years working on the source water protection program, but we're really excited to have Isabel on board to continue the technical advancement of this program. Okay, so if I can turn everyone's attention to agenda item number 3, which is found on page 9 of your agenda package. And thank you, Mr. Chair, for the introduction. I am really happy to share that we are in the final stages of our Section 36 update, where we are now looking to get approval from the Source Protection Authorities to submit a revised work plan, source protection plan, assessment reports, and explanatory document. Following the approval of our source protection plan in 2015, we received an order from the minister that stated by November 2018, we were to submit a work plan outlining proposed updates and revisions to our source protection documents. This was an opportunity for us to update policies that may not be working, consider additional policies, include more recent data and information, and also realign our documents to correspond with the recently updated technical rules. After we submitted that work plan, we received an amended order outlining requirements governing the contents and timeframes of this review and the process to follow for these updates. Overall, our Section 36 update included minor revisions to certain source protection plan policies, the development of a few new source protection plan policies, and relatively minor updates to the assessment reports, including aligning our documents to consider the new technical rules. The legislation and our order were very prescriptive in terms of the consultation necessary to be completed. In summary, the ministry had 3 opportunities to review and comment on the proposed revisions. Our policy implementers, which includes other ministries and our municipal partners, had 2 opportunities to comment. Anyone impacted by the policy revisions or new technical rules had 2 opportunities to comment. The public and local Indigenous groups were also consulted during a mandatory 35-day consultation process. At each step in the consultation period, all comments were received and reviewed by the Source Protection Committee. Revisions were made at the discretion of the Mississippi Rideau Source Protection Committee. A comprehensive record of consultation has been maintained and was made available to the committee at each meeting. A final review of the updates was presented to the committee at their latest SPC meeting on December the 12th. In accordance with the Clean Water Act, The SPC provided staff with direction to consult with the source protection authorities prior to our final submission to the ministry. The source protection authorities will give staff the direction to submit to MECP. We presented the same staff report to the Rideau Valley Source Protection Authority in January and received direction to submit to the ministry. Following this meeting, staff will submit the final decision package to the ministry. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Marika. That's been a very, very long process, and we thank you. You're the continuity in that whole process all the way through. So you've seen it from start to finish. So it's nice to have that. So what we have is the Section 36 update, and now that it's ready for submission, there is a motion, and the motion is that the Mississippi Valley Source Protection Authority receive the Section 36 update as presented in the report 3469/25, and further resolve that the Mississippi Valley Source Protection Authority directs staff to submit the Section 36 update to the Ministry of the Environment, Conservation, and Parks. Do I have someone to move that? Taylor, second. Okay, Dina, all those in favor? All right. And finally, we have an adjournment. So be it resolved that the Mississippi Valley Source Protection Authority meeting be adjourned. Do I have someone to move that? Moved by Helen, seconded by Mary Lou. All those in favor? Carried. Okay, thank you. And thank you both for coming. I'm still envious over your driving a Mustang Mach 3, but all right. The next order of business is this is the call to order for the Mississippi Valley Board of Directors meeting. Okay, roll call has been taken. We do have quorum. If there is anyone who has any declaration of interest, you can make it now or at any time during the meeting. So first, there is the adoption of the agenda. Be it resolved that the agenda for the February 10th, 2025 Board of Directors meeting be adopted as presented. Do I have someone to move? Okay, moved by Dina, seconded by Taylor. All those in favor? Carried. The approval of the minutes. Be it resolved that the minutes of the Board of Directors meeting held December 9th, 2024 be received and approved as printed. Someone to move. Richard, seconded by Jeff. All those in favor? Carried. Okay, our first item is employee presentation, County Forest presentation, Brian Anderson. You wouldn't know it because he looks so much younger, but Brian and I go back a long way to kids in hockey way time ago.
Yeah, that was a while ago. Anyway, Sally asked me to talk about trees and forestry, and she said I only had 2 hours. So this is going to be quick. Atlantic County Forest, myself, I know some of you folks, not so much, some more. 30 years with Ministry of Natural Resources, forestry, fish and wildlife management, firefighting, gypsy moth, crown land management, and lots of good stuff. I left there and came to Mississippi Valley on a 1-year pregnancy backfill 22 years ago. I laugh when I think about that because that child involved is in university now. Anyway, what I did here, I came here as an environmental planner, and then I headed up the stewardship program and a whole lot of other stuff in there too. Okay. So that's me. My buddy in crime there, Martin Strait, he couldn't be here today. He's delivering the provincial tree marking certificate course in Huntsville. He's also a retired M&R forester, and he and I work on the county forest together. So a little bit of history about county forest. The turn of the century, that's like the last century, Southern Ontario landscape was very degraded. They had, after the white pine trade and poor farming practices, there was a tremendous amount of erosion and land was disrespected. The government at the time decided that they wanted a private land forestry program for Southern Ontario. So they implemented the tree planting program and the agreement forest program. Agreement forests were an agreement that was signed between the provincial government and different landowners or agencies. Some were with townships, some were with counties, some were with conservation authorities, and some even with private companies like Domtar. The Ministry of Natural Resources or Lands and Forests at the time put up the money to buy these properties, but they are not Crown land. They are owned in fee simple or in private ownership by the counties. So in Lanark County, the first one was purchased in 1938 in Levant, and it was 1,600 acres, and it has been managed by Lands and Forests and MNR up until 2001 when Mike Harris came along. Anyway, the current area of the forest is 11,000 acres. Actually, it's a bit more than that because they had a new property that was donated to the county a year or so ago. The main one that was originally purchased, 1,100 acres, is in Levant. These are beautiful properties. Like the one in Levant has 3 lakes on it: Bottle Lake, Dixon Lake, Caldwell Lake, 1,100 acres, totally wild. When you take the community forest properties and add them in with the Crown land that's in Lanark County, it's not a lot different than being in Algonquin Park. They're just absolutely a really beautiful land base. The Lanark County Forest itself, 85% forested, 15 wetlands and 15 forests as plantations. 80% of them are located in Lanark Highlands. A lot of these were purchased because they were old farms, and in the 1950s and 60s, when the farming community went from horse-drawn equipment into modern agricultural stuff like tractors, the land base just didn't lend itself to those. So these are a lot of old, rough, stony farms that were purchased. Actually, in Lanark County, the county forest comprises 38 different properties in a variety of sizes, some down to like 30 or 40 acres, but a lot of them are 1,100 or 1,200 acres. Lanark County was one of the agreement holders, but there was a lot of other ones around the province. In fact, there was 59 community or agreement forests around the province, a little less than 300,000 acres. And these are opportunities for recreation for residents and other people around the Southern Ontario. One of the ones you might be familiar with that was purchased quite early was the Baird property in Lanark Highlands, used on an almost daily basis as a walking trail. A few years back, Mississippi Valley, some of the volunteers and some students, they increased the boardwalk at the back and put in 2 new loops for the trail, and it is highly used. The management that we have done so far at County Forest is a cooperative between MVCA, Upper Canada Forest Service, which is Martin Street, and the County of Lanark. It's a good example of an ongoing partnership where everybody benefits. We do all of this under a 5-year memorandum of understanding between the county and Mississippi Valley. We started that years ago after the original 2-year pilot project, and we've had several 5-year extensions on that so far. The management that we do on behalf of the county, behalf of MVC to the county, is on a cost recovery basis. So I go out and work for the forestry for the county for the day. Mississippi charged them back for my time. All the management that we do is to certification standards. There are international standards. If you look on the back of your little envelopes, you see the FSC logo. That's an international forest management standard. The Lanark County Forest, our management has succeeded in being recognized as being good enough to be part of that. We are in the process now of acquiring certification through SFI, the American Standard Forest Initiative. How am I doing? So the roles that we have delineated is Lanark County gives the direction. They have a Lanark County Community Forest Working Group. It's made up of several counselors, representative of the forest industry, a representative from the Lanark County Stewardship, one from the Ministry of Natural Resources, and one from Mississippi Valley Field Naturalists. I'm the forest manager, and Martin, with his company, provides professional services. Oh, what happened? Oh, went the wrong way. So activities. There was, after M&R kind of disappeared off the scene, the county forest or agreement forest kind of sat stagnant for quite a few years. Through this, my efforts through the stewardship program here, we kind of started in with this management protocols. So what we want to do in the future is what we have already done is renew the traditional program of forest management. The Community Forest Working Group has been successful in creating a new recreational use policy and a tree conservation bylaw. And we are ongoing doing the 20-year forest management plans and 5-year operating plans and individual harvest plans. Some of the efforts that we do is thinning of the red pine plantations. After the properties were purchased, a lot of the rough ground pastures and fields were planted with red pine, and they are just starting to get to the point now that we're doing first, second, and even some third thinnings on those red pine. So they have gone from kind of like a break-even thing on the first thinning to very lucrative products now. We're talking utility poles. All of our management is to the standard of the MNR management standards. So all of the fish and wildlife and habitat concerns are all incorporated into our management plans. Future opportunities. There is an opportunity, a great, tremendous opportunity to expand the recreational opportunities on county forests. There's 38 properties, and there's only 2 of them that have organized signed trails on them. Tremendous opportunity here. And again, these are properties like the Amiot property is 1,200 acres in Pakenham, and it is absolutely wild. I think there's one road that goes through the middle of it. The Bickerstaff property in Levant has 1,200 acres. It has 2 Nelson Lakes and Pigeon Lake on it. So these are tremendous assets. So we'd like to increase the public knowledge of these properties, and there's an opportunity for Mississippi Valley to assist in these properties, projects. Through the MOU, we have the ability to partner with the counties and do some projects for them on a cost recovery basis. And we'd also like to continue the professional forest management. There, less than 2 hours. Any questions?
You can breathe now. Any questions for Brian? Yes, sir.
Yeah, just wondering, are there any maps available showing where these are located, and where would a person get one?
Yes, all of this stuff, individual maps and county maps are on the county website. If you go on the county website, look under forest management, they will have the copies of the 20-year management plan, the 5-year operating plans, individual maps of all the properties.
I have a question.
Janet.
Yeah, no, I didn't know very much about county forests. Are they treated, I don't know if that's the right word, the same way as provincial crown land in terms of people's rights or ways to use them?
Yes and no. Crown land belongs to the Crown, or in this case, the province of Ontario. The county forest properties were purchased by the Crown, but the county owns them in fee simple. So it's the same as you owning your house or your own property. The county owns them as private land. So the county is able then to do the recreation policy and set out the standards of what people can and can't do on their private property.
Okay, so just to clarify, like, I mean, there's certain rights for being able to camp on Crown land and I can't remember. There's a number of things that you can do on Crown land, but I think you're saying that every county forest is managed by the rules the county sets.
That's
So-
right.
And so Crown land rules in quotes are not applicable to these.
Yes.
Okay,
Other than the original purchase by the Crown, there is no comparison or involvement.
Clark has a question, and I think
Jeannie does too. If she wants to go first, I think she's been waiting a little longer than me.
That's okay. All right, I'll go ahead. And just one quick question. First of all, it was very interesting. I too didn't know a lot about it, but is there any benefit financial, like when you do the harvesting of those properties, who sees the financial benefit? Is it the county that would see that?
That's right. Every year, under our 5-year operating plan, we have a list of properties that we are going to do harvesting on. So we put out tenders to the general public and through our list of forest contractors. They bid on the contracts. We pick the county picks the highest price, and they are allowed to do the harvesting. Any profits that come back from the harvesting of forest resources go back into the county pot. Now, it's called non-tax revenue, so they are able to dip into that to provide funds for trails and other activities.
Thank you.
okay, Clark.
Well, that basically was my question. My interest was really piqued by the utility pole harvesting stuff. I thought that was a really interesting concept to make this a sustainable program. And then is there you had mentioned that some of this land was previously used for agriculture. Is there any of this land that is still used for agriculture that is owned by the Crown or by the county? And then if so, how does that work? Is pasture rented out to agricultural operators, and then that is the same as the utility pole relationship with operators? But again, is there any agriculture happening on any of these properties?
No, there's not. When the properties were purchased, they were not, they were subsistence farming properties, and all of the open land was planted with trees. In other agreement forests, there are a lot of other activities. There are places where they have agriculture. There's one of them that has a ski hill, all kinds of different things, but not in Lanark. Now, when you talk about utility poles, the first setting of red pine is, again, a break even. But once you get to the point where you are harvesting utility poles, you could be looking in the neighborhood of $100, $150 a tree for smaller sized poles. So significant amount of revenue.
Thank you.
Richard?
Yeah, I just wanted to, like the county forest, that was a great report. But the county forest is owned by the county, and the forestry committee is a committee of Lanark County Council, which reports back to Lanark County Council. And it was mentioned the revenue, which has started to add up a little bit over the last decade. None of it goes anywhere except for trails or back into the county forest. We have used the money from the forestry to justify upgrading and doing things with trails. So I can guarantee you the K&P, when that comes along, that some of the money from the hydro poles will be going into it. So that's just to be a little bit more blunt, that that revenue stays with the county because the county owns it and pays for the management contract too, comes out of that. But that's, and at the beginning, it wasn't that much money, and now it's starting to add up to a little bit more money into those reserves. It's set into a forestry reserve. It doesn't just disappear.
Okay, any other questions? Yes, Mary Lou.
Are any of these county forests being used in some kind of project or partnership with nonprofits like the Madawaska, Mississippi Land Trust and or the Field Naturalist? You mentioned that somebody from the Field Naturalist is on the working committee.
Over the time, there has been other organizations that have done environmental surveys, species at risk and that sort of stuff, but they're kind of one-off, not so much a long-term coordination. Well, yeah, you're right. There's another thing. We have one property that's in behind Wheeler's maple syrup operation, county forest, that we have rented out to them on a per tap basis, which brings in a little bit of revenue for the county every year. But it does provide trees in the close vicinity to Wheeler's that has kind of put them over the top to the largest producer in Ontario now.
Okay, any other questions? Well, Brian, that stimulated a lot of conversation, and if you give this maybe another 7, 8 years, I'm pretty sure you're going to be an expert on this whole forestry thing.
Well, I'm working on it.
Thanks, Brian. Okay, our next item is the GM update with Sally.
Okay, there's just a few things I wanted to highlight. So for starters, the Kashwakamak Lake Dam, the EA was successfully tabled at the end of last year. We had a review period and no request for escalation of the EA. So we're proceeding with developing the terms of reference for RFP to be able to let that out for detailed design. So our goal for 2025 is to complete the detailed design for the Kashwakamak Lake Dam. Sorry. There we go. The Kintel Christmas was also held again last year, and we upped the ante, and we came in just almost at break even, and it was just under $500 that we came in at over budget, or I guess break even point, pardon me. And so on that, it's staff, it's a big event for the organization. It draws a lot of people to the site, and we do see merit in continuing to run it. But just wanted to share with you that it's looking like it's more of a promotional event for the site than something that we're actually able to make money on. And I think that's important as we move forward and thinking about Category 3 programs and the level of effort to run certain events. It's especially if you want to make them affordable to the community. That so operating that event at a loss at 500, I think, is a reasonable thing. But if anybody feels otherwise, I'm sure you'll let me know. So. Next thing I want to let you know is I know we feel frustrated at time with our mics here and the ability of those of you online to see people and the like, and for us to handle meetings when the chair's out of the room. So we are finally moving forward with an upgrade to the AV system. It's going to happen, I believe, next week or the week after, next week. So by this time next month, when we're having our meeting, it should be all up and running, and hopefully we will have worked out any of the bugs, but knock on wood, we'll be able to host these meetings more easily going forward with that. You would have noticed under staffing, we've had lots of changes, and so some congratulations are in order to people who have moved up and into new positions. So Tim Yoon, Daniel Post, Marissa Oakham, Rachel. So there's lots of people there. And we're actively recruiting for our summer student program. We've posted for 14 positions. We've applied to Canada Summer Jobs to get subsidies for all of them. Remains to be seen. But the budgeting was based upon the assumption that we wouldn't necessarily get grants for all of them. And the education program, is to be almost near full cost recovery this year. That's our goal. So, and we're doing quite well since we started that program this year, expanding it to March break and PA days. We've had really good response. So we've already met some of our target numbers for this year, which is very reassuring. And that's all I wanted to highlight from this meeting's GM report.
Okay, any questions for Sally? Jeannie?
Yeah, hi. Thank you, Sally. Couple of questions. First one, the report from Egress on the Lanark Dam. Your report says imminently. Can you give me like, is it next week maybe?
We were in the DSR report for Lanark Dam. Yes. So we're expecting the draft report this month. I think it was originally due, but yes. So at some point this month, we'll be receiving it. Based upon whenever we get that report, we'll be able to scope out what the items are that are to be done at that dam this year,
Right.
and then issue RFP for that work.
Sorry, so where my concern is, or where my question really is about the ownership of the land that will actually have the guide or the point places. So that's kind of where I'm going with that. I'm just trying to get a feel, do I need a heads up for the township? It says in your report that you may contact the township for ownership. And
Right.
Before I ask them, I just want to hear what you have to say.
Okay, so land ownership around all of our dams is tricky. I would say there's a lot of land transfers that happened historically that were not accompanied by actual drawings. There's a lot of meets and ends and that sort of survey talk from 2 centuries ago, meets and bounds. And even then, when we have drawings, they weren't always registered on title. They were maybe in the land registry. They weren't brought up into the land titles office. So when we looked at the land ownership around the Lanark Dam, it's taken us a while to sort out, first of all, who owns what. Do we own the land that we're interested in, or does somebody else own it? So we just recently, in the past week, identified a parcel that we believe is owned by the township. So I'll follow up with you offline on that. We need to have another meeting with Aegis on this. But whether or not it's the township land or a private landowner, I think either way, it's beneficial if you and I chat about that.
Okay, that's great. And my second question is, and maybe I'm jumping ahead because it's in your external report. So should I wait until you get there or just jump to it?
Go ahead.
It's actually the first item in your external. It's the new regulations governing ministerial powers. I'm new to this game and I'm trying to read as much as I can. And it kind of scares me a little bit when I read that. So maybe you could just
elaborate?
Yes.
Sure. So the minister now has the power to basically issue permits as a CA would be, able to do, or to refuse a permit. But the more likely scenario is to issue a permit. And there was, several months of negotiations with the CAs, to ensure, we hoped, that a minister would only exercise that under certain circumstances and how that power would be exercised. So what happened earlier this year is that the regulation governing when the minister can execute those powers and how, what you see is simply what we have. It's the minister can, if the minister deems that it's of provincial interest. So there's no governance as to how they execute that power. It's very open-ended, and it's basically putting into place that which was already in law.
So is there any response or retort if you don't agree with what the minister decides or deems relevant? Is there any, there's no tribunal, there's no body that you can go to then?
I think the best you could do is maybe go to court.
Okay,
Yeah.
so yeah, and that's long and arduous and costly. I'm just trying to prepare myself because I think this could be a can of worms, and I like to know where the worms are. So thank you very much.
Okay. Bev, you had a question?
Thank you. Yes, I do. Sally, I noticed that the MailChimp was hacked. Was there any consequences of that? Any sensitive material bit out, or where are you with that?
So thankfully, Kelly was online, I believe, when it happened. So she was actually in MailChimp at the time. So she saw this sort of third party interrupting her activities. So it was shut down like almost immediately. The unfortunate thing that happened was that in dealing with MailChimp, the only way we were able to shut it down was to literally cancel our account. And to cancel the account, we had to pay them to cancel our account. And then dealing with MailChimp since has been unsatisfactory. So we're still working on getting our money back because that shouldn't be the only way that you can shut down a MailChimp account is to pay the provider. And we've had to sign on with another vendor. So that meant uploading all our lists again. But so to the best of my knowledge, though, in answer to your question, no, there was no breach beyond them trying to manipulate our account. We were just incredibly lucky that Kelly was actually in MailChimp when that hack was attempted.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Seeing none, we'll move on to Stacy, and Sally will be talking about the 2025 budget and where we're finally at.
So we took the intervening weeks since the board approved it in principle for circulation to revisit and tweak and adjust some things. So the revised budget, we deleted some things and added in other things. So it's actually coming in slightly less than what the board approved in December, but it does now allow for all those adjustments that the board approved, both in terms of staff and management wage adjustments, according to, the market assessments and the changes in job evaluation for some positions. So we did circulate it to all the municipalities. We didn't hear back from any. We did make an offer to go and present to all of them, and we didn't have anybody take us up on that. So page 2 of the report, or 27 of your agenda package, has the final numbers. So you can see the budget now comes in at just over 6.6 million, and that the levies haven't changed. So all other things have remained the same from what you saw and approved at the December board meeting.
Okay, any questions? Okay, so what comes out of that is the resolution that the Board of Directors approved the 2025 budget as submitted. Do I have a mover? Okay, moved by Bev, seconded by Janet. All those in favor? It is carried. Thank you. Okay, our next item is the foundation update.
So I should have mentioned, in fact, that one of the adjustments we made was that when our foundation met last month, they did approve making donations towards some Category 3 programs this year in MVCA's budget. And Janet had suggested at one of the previous meetings that we bring forward a report on the foundation, because many of you are not familiar with it. So what I wanted to do is just take a bit of time to tell you about the history of the foundation and the work of it and how it's organized and hopes for it going forward. So the foundation was formed back in the 1990s in response to provincial funding cuts that occurred province-wide to conservation authorities. Many conservation authorities formed some sort of foundation or fundraising arm to help address the funding gap. And so most of them, including ours, their purpose is to support their associated authority. So you can see on page 73 of the agenda package that it's to provide funds and volunteer support for the conservation and education programs of MVCA. So that is what it has done for the past, almost 30 years now. And what we're looking at today, though, is a very small group of people who are quite dedicated, I would say, to helping raise funds. And the conversation that we had in part at the last meeting was that now that we have this new funding model where we have category 1, 2, and 3, historically, the foundation would actually contribute to a broader array of things. Like it would help to accelerate the construction of boardwalks, like the work that we did at PERD in the past few years. They would help fund that so it could proceed at an accelerated rate. But the construction of boardwalks at conservation areas is actually a category 1 service. It's, doing trails, which is a category 1 service. So as staff, when we were bringing forward concepts and ideas for the 2025 work plan for the foundation, we were looking more at focusing on category 3. So the board of directors is very small, and we just unfortunately lost a member, Paul Lehman, who used to have my position here. He had to step away due to health issues, but he's been replaced by Mike Cleland, who's been on the foundation board for several years and lives in the watershed, and just up by Blakeney. And stepping into the vice chair to replace him was Rob Sutherland, and he has a family property up in the Ompa area. And them combined with Janet is the board rep on the foundation, and the former mayor of Carleton Place, Louis. That's the foundation. So it's very small, but very vital. So over the past couple of years, we've been looking at trying to figure out how we can increase funding. And you may recall at the 50th anniversary event, we did a 50-50 raffle. And it was quite successful, considering it basically more or less only ran that day. It raised, a good amount of money. It was $1,400. And based on some of the lessons learned there, we explored looking at running a larger raffle. And so the intent of the foundation is to run a large-scale raffle this year. We're hoping to launch it in April and for the draw to be in June. And see whether or not, there's potential to do larger scale funding. And if that works, is it something we could make an annual event, much like you see other organizations run annual raffles to get a sustained amount of funding? Because part of the goal of us as an organization transitioning to the new funding model and making our category 3 programs self-sufficient is the degree to which this foundation is able to support those activities. It would be another source of funding that we would be looking at, because not all programs can be cost recovered through user fees, right? And nor do you necessarily want them to be. You don't want to necessarily have to charge for all of these things, or at market rates, if you want, as a public agency, for them to be affordable. So all that to say is that moving forward, as I mentioned, it's a small group, and we would like to engage more people. And so part of what I'm raising here today is if you know anybody who might be interested in sitting on the board or contributing in another matter to the work of the foundation, its purpose is, as I mentioned, is to support education programs, but also like the museum, and any of those things that we're now considering category 3, but right now it doesn't speak to that in their mandate. But one of the things we hope to accomplish this year is, given this whole new environment that we're working in, to look at the bylaws and see where we're compliant and where they need work, and to be updated to reflect current state. So I don't know if Janet, if you wanted to add anything to that.
Yeah, so just to add a couple more comments, we do definitely need to have more board members. And as we have found, particularly with Mike Cleland, who has amazing business connections, if you know of anyone in the business community who is interested in philanthropy and interested in the watershed, and I think 2 areas in particular that we would like to get representation from is the Mississippi Mills area. And I think it would also be great to get representation in the Kanata North area. And this isn't to say if you can't come from anywhere, but those would both be very valuable, I think, representatives. And I just as something, I think we in fact got Rob's name from Jeff Atkinson here. Like, it was basically he knew about Rob and his interests, and that he had a place in the watershed. So really it's through networks. And if there are people, don't have to have a business background, we should say that, but that's really ideal. And yeah, so please, I guess, contact Sally, right, or Mike with the names. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that presentation. Is there any questions for Sally about the foundation? Okay. Seeing none, item number 6, section 28 permit status update for 2024. Matt's going to lead us through that.
Good afternoon. Thank you. So in our package, we have 2 tables. One is the activity report and one is the timeline report. And just to give people a little bit of background, the activity report we've been publishing for about 10 years, and we're not required to publish it, but there's been feedback from the board that it's beneficial. There's a level of transparency with us publishing all of our permits. The timelines are new. We've been reporting on those for at least 6 years, but this format is new from Conservation Ontario in negotiation with the province. So this is the first time we've published it in this format. It is somewhat more detailed than our previous reporting. I would note one update. The total minor permits issued was 152, not 149. Just some background for the board. A major permit is rebuilding the floodplain, where you have technical standards that you have to abide by, and we do compliance checks, realignments, cut and fills, a lot of the work on the Carp River. Those would be major projects. Minor are, shoreline works, culverts, works of those nature. This year, we also have to report that our mapping is updated, so it's on our website. We do updates as applications come in and the works are completed. So those are new. We have to submit a similar report from April to December, where these statistics are for the board, and these are for all of 2024. So we'll be submitting those at the end of the week to be in compliant with Conservation Ontario's request.
Okay, thank you. Questions for Matt? Okay, I have one, Matt. I guess you have timelines and stuff that the province and the association.
Just
So
a
what
quick
happens if you
question.
don't meet a timeline? Do they slap your wrist, or what do they do?
Sorry, someone interrupted. I didn't catch the end of that.
Just basically asking if you don't meet the.
I heard slap on the wrist.
Yeah. So I'm basically asking what happens if you don't meet the timelines on a major thing? Do they slap your wrist or is it deemed approved? Like,
I'll go back, and if you look at our table, our timelines look exceptional. The reason why they do is when someone comes in for a permit, we have we really emphasize pre-consultation. So people come in, we tell them, okay, you need a XYZ to complete your application, so that we put their permit on hold. And then when it comes back in, staff are ready to receive the information and process because they've had a heads up, they know what's coming in. So first of all, our timelines look exceptional. I think that's basically the process about when you put things on hold and the feedback and the process that's been outlined by the province. As far as if you don't have good timelines, there's been some concern, I think, in the development industry that we have had some delays and we are delaying. I think if you look at more around the Toronto region, there's more concern about beating these timelines, and I think that's where a lot of this stems from. So I don't know what the repercussion is, but this would be negotiation with the province about potentially changing legislation about timelines, but this is a reporting process only at this point, from what I understand.
okay, thank you. Bev, you have your hand up, and then Jeannie.
Thank you. I'm noticing for Mississippi Mills, there's several permits for concession 7B lot 25. Are those all the one same project?
That's catching me without really looking at them. Generally not. They could be stages. Like if you apply for a permit, it has its own permit number. So we will bulk work together, but it could be they are submitted at different times of the year, and generally they are for very different types of work. Or a lot of those, I think, are about the telecommunications industry, which will submit mass information, and we divide it in a way that we can do compliance or manage that project. So I think those might be the ones. I'd have to look them up. I can get back to you on that.
Sure, like I noticed one of them is to replace a culvert and alteration to an associated water course. So I'm just kind of curious.
I can get back to you on that.
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay, Jeannie?
Yeah, so my question is kind of along the same lines, and I think Matt already answered it by the first question. I just wondered why there would be two separate permits for the same address, but I think he basically said that it could be a different type of work or maybe submitted at a different time of the year. So the question was answered. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Yes, Wayne?
Yeah, thank you. I'm just wondering, there is on one of your charts here, there was a peak in permits issued, I guess, in around 21, and it's been declining ever since. Is there any specific reason for that?
Yes, we were just inundated with work associated with the flooding of 2017 and 19. And it took a while for people. There was a lack of contractors, lack of materials, lack of technical professionals. So I think there was over 100 homes rebuilt, shoreline works. So that crisis kind of ended and things have stabilized.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you, Matt. That seems to be
I
all.
have one more
Oh,
question, please.
you have one more question, Bev, okay.
Okay, I'm just noticing, the, Blakeney Road, lot 25, concession 19. I take it that's just a typo, right? It's to replace the Blakeney Bridge structure?
Right. Do you know what page and
Page
It's-
83 of 95.
the 3 and the date, if that would, if you have that.
June 14th, 2024.
Okay, June 14th, you said, sorry?
Yeah.
Why am I not seeing this?
There is a W24/050, if that helps.
Are we at so we're on page 83 of the agenda?
Yes,
Okay, and
second from the top.
second from the top, Bolton Bridge Road is on mine. Maybe if I might have, mine doesn't seem to be in sync
You
with
can
what.
get back to me later. I'm just kind of curious about that.
Okay, what's the number again? Sorry.
W 24050.
050.
Okay, I think that probably, Matt, you need to get back to Bev on a couple of questions there.
Yep, no
If
problem.
that works out. All right. Okay, anything else? All right. Thank you, Matt, for that presentation and all the good work that you do and keeping up with all the work. The next one is the Ferry Road property with Sally McIntyre. Took me a moment to think about this because I grew up on the Ferry Road, but I was thinking, no, it's all in the Rideau Valley watershed. So where is this Ferry Road?
So this ferry road is at the very north end of West Carleton. It's right near the Fitzroy Harbor Provincial Park up there. So this is a property, and I will turn it over to Clark to add some additional words. But this is a parcel that the City of Ottawa is looking to purchase. It's a staff report has come forward to a couple of committees, and I believe it's this week it'll be coming to council. Is that correct, Councillor? Or is it next week? Yeah, okay. In any event, the reason why I've brought it forward to the board here is two reasons. One, we have made an application to Conservation Ontario through a partnership it has with Environment Canada to help get the city some money to cover administrative costs associated with the acquisition. We did this similar sort of thing for Mississippi Madawaska Land Trust to help them offset some of their costs for land that they purchased within our watershed. So it's strictly, you know, us acting as a conduit to help them find some money to offset their costs. So we're hoping that we might be able to access some fiscal year-end federal funding. As far as we know, there might still be some monies available that we can access for the city between now and March 31st. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that there has been talk at the city about the potential of asking MVCA to manage the property similar as we do the Morris Island property, which is just upstream for this property. And so before that sort of, you know, got talked about in the greater sphere, I wanted to let the board know that this is something that the city has talked about. Of course, you know, that could not happen until this board would approve that and we'd see details of the agreement and the like. But I just thought it was important to bring this to your attention because this property has been in the news in recent weeks, and this topic might come up when it does go before council. So I just wanted to make sure board members were apprised of this before City Council debated the matter of whether or not to proceed with the purchase of this property. So I'll turn it over to Clark if I can now to add comment. It's in his ward.
Thank you very much, Sally. And I come wearing two hats inevitably today, one City of Ottawa, one Mississippi Valley Conservation Authority, and or maybe three hats, a resident and representative of West Carleton Marsh, where this property is. So there's been a lot of discussion about this property because of the cost of it. I believe this program is something that the city's been running for years, and I've purchased multiple properties in my ward, but they fell well under the amount for delegated authority. So this has gotten a little bit more discussion than previous acquisitions under the program. And I have had residents reach out urging either partnerships or some way to make it a little more valuable for the city. And so reaching out to Sally was the first call I made in terms of potential partners and ways to manage this together, and hoping you know, there's some core services that the city delivers. Conservation is not really one of them, but we do have a wonderful conservation authority who oversees our watershed, and that is their area of expertise. So I'm hoping that people are amicable to the idea of a potential partnership moving forward to manage the property if and when the city moves forward with acquisition. And I do believe that while council, it was a close vote in terms of deferring the acquisition until potential partnerships could be pursued or looked at. So I believe the will of council probably is to acquire the property, and this is an exercise in trying to make that the best acquisition that we possibly can, and having some expertise in terms of managing the property moving forward. So appreciate the time that Sally has taken to talk to both me and the chair of the Agricultural and Rural Affairs Committee, and the discussions that she's had with city staff, which I believe have been beneficial to the idea of this acquisition. So happy to take any questions or take part in any conversation here today. Thanks, Sally.
Okay, any questions for Clark and Sally? I understand Clark is kind of cowboying up too because he's not very well today. So it's nice to see that he made it.
Yes, thank you.
I think this fits very well with the next topic we're having, which is our strategy, which talked about just exactly this type of partnership. So I think it's something that when the time comes, will certainly be something to consider. But anybody else have any comments? Janet? No, Janet's just giving a thumbs up. Okay. Okay, seeing none. Thank you again, Clark. I hope you're feeling better by tomorrow.
And
Okay.
that was my first local feedback there, was Janet's thumbs up. So
Okay, our next item and our last item in the agenda is the corporate strategy plan update, and Sally's going to take us through that.
Okay, so as I believe most of you should be aware, we are due to update our corporate strategic plan this year. And the first thing we did just last week, in fact, was issue 2 surveys out to staff. The first one asking sort of their feedback on the current strategic plan. And then the second one, we've given them more time to respond on, which is if that's not where we need to be going, where do you think we need to be focusing? So we did get some initial feedback by the end of the week, and I'll admit I was a bit surprised. So in terms of the 3 key themes around which the current corporate strategic plan is built, asset management, community building, and people and performance, the asset management one, well, several people thought it was important. Staff felt community building and people and performance were more important. And I thought that. To my recollection, and I meant to bring them here, but they're not complete, but none of them scored very high in terms of staff's sort of feeling that these were themes around which to build a future corporate strategic plan. In other words, none of them scored really high. So even though I'm saying to you that community building and people and performance were the forerunners, it wasn't like they were landslide, 60, 70, 80%. They weren't. That's what was surprising to me, was that on a theme basis, they weren't really resonating with staff. So I guess this begs the question then to you about whether those themes resonate to you, with you. And I've posed a couple of other questions there, and I was hoping to start to get an initial bit of feedback from you on this, because I have to admit, as I said, I was a bit surprised that these themes didn't resonate more with staff. Now, like I said, it's incomplete results at this time, but enough of feedback. I think 2/3 of staff responded that I thought that was instructive, right? So Paul has agreed to facilitate a bit of an initial discussion around the 3 questions that we have in the report here. So I'll turn it over to you, Paul.
Okay, so when we look at this, MVCA delivers these programs, staff have had a look at it, and you've heard how I report on that. So I guess the question is, if you were looking at these, perhaps you could look through the list and say, okay, I wonder with the language that's in here, is it, for lack of better words, I almost user-friendly, or can I understand exactly what this means? And on a nuts and bolts, that was sort of my first take on it. but I'm wondering, want to hear from the rest of you on it as well. And Janet, good. Kick us off, Janet.
Well, I remember when we did this, Sally. Yeah, and as you know, I have a background doing some strategic planning. There's nothing inherently wrong with any of this in that it says what we need to do, but it's not inspiring. And I think maybe that's what staff was trying to get at. It didn't resonate or inspire them. So I think it comes down to, and it's not just a rewording. I don't mean to imply that. I think there needs, whatever the new strategic plan does, it needs to really look forward to what does MVCA aspire to do? And I mean, yes, it had to get the asset management and capital programs done, but you know, it's kind of like that's administrative. So, you know, it could be around the education element, the stewardship elements, the, you know, I don't know. I would have to think about it, but that's what I would focus on is that inspiration. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else have thoughts off the spur of the moment, or do you want homework? Okay, I see Bev hands up and then Jeff. Bev?
Thank you. Yeah, I have to say, when I looked at it, I thought it was kind of boring too. But I'm wondering, where is climate change in all this and financial stability? Like if we look at today's environment, those are two very important items, and I don't know how you'd incorporate them in. I'm not a, no expert on it, but just a thought. That's it. Thanks.
Okay, Jeff?
Just to echo what's already been said, I think it's a matter of semantics more than intent. The phrase community building could easily be replaced with strategic partnerships to give more of an operational sense and some direction rather than kumbaya, which is the sense that I got from it. But I agree, maybe tapping a writer to have a look at the plan once the pieces are in place to just give it that polish would be helpful.
I have a comment.
Perhaps more action verbs or something, like that tends to be, my problem is I glaze off at these things too many years in the government, right? And how many thousands of these I've seen.
Make the Carp River great again.
Okay, Mary Lou, you had a comment.
How about find the Carp River? I've been driving past some parts of it and you think, I wonder where that is. I haven't been here long enough to have been part of a process of strategic planning before. But in the 2 years I have been here, it struck me that the Conservation Authority staff have been running in place, trying their best to keep up with the ever increasing demand at the provincial government level to produce more and more reports on what they do without any expanded financial support. And you've been getting squeezed for years, so that I could see that it'd be fine to have really inspiring, really ambitious goals for the next 5 years. But, there is the cliche about being up to your ass in alligators. It's hard to look at the swamp. So I really think that might be part of what's going on behind the scenes.
Thank you. Okay, before I get to Jeannie, I'm going to you, but I want to say to Janet, don't take this the wrong day, but our regional director came to Ottawa because we were having a whole bunch of issues with the carp floodplain stuff. We drove her down 417 and we pointed and said, that's the Carp River. She looked at it and she said, that's a ditch.
It just reinforces make the Carp River great again. The only reason it's a ditch is it got dredged and unloved.
And I mean, she was emphatic. It was that's a ditch. Okay, Jeannie.
I'm certainly not an expert, and again, I'm new to the game, but I think it's hard. It's not relevant to a lot of people. Now, people that are on the water or have a connection to the water are, they're engaged. I think we have to engage the people that are not on the water, the people that, don't have access to recreational properties, and make it something that they can be involved and inspired in. I just think sometimes we are so water centric that we forget about the other people.
All right. Any other comments? Now, I'm still going to give you homework to take this away, and it'll be on the next agenda as well for any further comments. And certainly feel free to do write-in comments to Sally here. She's not busy at all, and she can be happy to see your emails, Okay. Sally, you have a point.
So, I agree. I would love it to be inspirational. I'm just curious how people feel about the fact, though, that some of the things that you mentioned in terms of being inspirational are all category 3. So that's where I'm struggling, is that's the unfunded sort of insecure portion of our portfolio. And that's what I'm grappling with. And I guess Jeannie, on the point you just made, I think it's an excellent one. The way the province changed our mandate, they removed the natural systems component, which is where we were so engaged with people who didn't have waterfront properties, right? Now that we are strictly a natural hazard conservation organization, it's, again, any of that kind of work becomes a category 3 effort. So I just put that out there to you because it really, I think, needs some thinking about in terms of how we, yeah.
So you say you've become boring.
I think the language will matter from a corporate perspective, because if you want a strategic plan that you can implement, then presumably you're putting things in it that you're prepared to put time and effort into. And time and effort in this organization is measured according to whether it's a category 1, 2, or 3 service. So it's just something we need to think about as we craft this next version of the strategic plan.
Yeah, certainly the province has turned the Conservation Authority up on its end in the last little bit with its decrees and stuff. So I see Glenn, and then Richard has a comment. Glenn.
Thank you. Sally, I was just wondering if you could provide a little bit more details about the feedback you have heard from your staff so far. I think it'd be helpful before the board weighs in to hear some of the themes and some of the idea that people on the ground are sharing.
So we basically just asked them, if you look at the corporate strategic plan, did they believe whether or not they were worthy of being carried for the next 5 years? That was the question. Did these resonate with you to carry forward? And only 3 people said asset management. I think it was something like, and I might not have the numbers. I meant to bring them here, and I apologize for that. I think it was more like maybe 12 said community building and 17 said people and performance. And we have over 30 people in this organization. So these were not, stellar numbers. But as I said, not everybody's responded yet. So I was just surprised at how they responded on those themes. And then secondarily, we asked them with the individual objectives. Now, everybody universally said, yeah, we should implement our 5-year capital program. But as you move through the individual objectives under those, there was inconsistency, people, none of these really were grabbing people other than implement the 5-year capital plan. And again, I thought that was quite striking that it wasn't resonating with staff as something we needed to carry forward into the next 5-year period. And I haven't had the opportunity to explore this with them, and that's part of why I wanted to do that first blush to see what questions I needed to be asking, and do we need to workshop this with staff to better understand what their feedback was.
Richard.
Yeah, to some of Sally's points there, I think that a strategic plan should reflect reality too. And I think the reality, provincial government could change, but the reality of this provincial government, and that we have to deal with that, that's what it is. It's not our wish list. This is what we can do. And I think climate change, that's something that bandwagon that could be jumped on a little bit more in the strategic plan. But the other thing is that in those community building in the category 3, I think there is opportunities to do that, but it has to be at least at cost recovery, if not making money to support other things. Like the Christmas party losing $500, like that's just not, we shouldn't be subsidizing that. And the summer camp should be making money so we can do the Christmas party. But anyway, those strategically, I think for those category 3s, it's how, and I know other conservation authorities, Sally's brought back before, are making money off their category 3s. We're losing money. And we should be taking that, even in our strategic plan, that's the goal, right? And to use those opportunities, the same as farming out the service to the community forest, that those are opportunities to take our staff, spread it out, and make money from it from somewhere else. But I just think the strategic plan can't be about the way it was in 1990. It's got to be about what the reality is of today and going forward today, and the challenges of that and how we're going to meet it. Anyway, that's my little, I'm looking forward to the homework.
Thank you. Janet?
Okay, I'll give this more thought, but I'm thinking of all the things that Yura and his group has done. And, the vision really is a modern and automated watershed. And I'm sure there's a better way to put that, but the whole idea of having the models, right? That you can run a model for the watershed and scenarios. What we're doing with the dams so that you can perhaps manage them remotely, the remote monitoring items. So you're talking about a modern automated ability to manage your watershed. So I think that's inspiring. And I think that goes to a lot of things that we're doing that are category 1, right? So there are ways to do it.
Okay. Seeing no other hands up, I think we're beat that around. And yeah, I'm going to call for adjournment. I get a motion for adjournment. Come on, Wayne. Wayne. Okay. And Cindy. All those? Yes. We stand adjourned, folks. There are a few of us that are meeting as part of the trail committee, right? Afterwards. So the rest of you, safe drive home.